Welcome to securely authenticating and managing a mobile app in this SAP NetWeaver Cloud by me, Chris Payne. This is second in my attempts to blog about the application that Joanna Chan and I are building to use a mobile device, a timesheet, interfacing with the SAP NetWeaver Cloud. So today's badly drawn blog is about the challenges that we face in actually securing the device. So the basic challenge we have is that we have the cloud and the device, and we need to be able to securely authenticate the device. Now, securing the communication isn't a problem because we're using HTTPS as our communication protocol. So all that heavy lifting's already been done with us. Our problem is how do we make sure that the device is actually the one that we said it was. Now, the previous blog that I wrote about was using OAuth 2 to be able to leverage a third-party authentication provider like Google or Twitter or Facebook and use them as a trusted partner to be able to authenticate. Now, I thought that would be a fantastic way to go this time as well. Of course, there is a slight problem in this time. Rather than me being the client and the third party being the provider, I'm actually going to be the provider of the authentication, and this makes it a lot harder to be able to do because there aren't actually that many OAuth provider libraries out there. So I kind of had to scrap that idea and come up with something else. So when we thought about it, because we're using HTTPS, the whole idea of using a basic username and password solution to be able to authenticate works. I mean, I can use, if I each my devices, I have a username and password. I can use that to send it across using basic authentication underneath my HTTPS, and I can use that to authenticate to the cloud, and it would work brilliantly. But there is just a small problem with that. Usernames tend to be easy to remember, and passwords tend not to be. And one of the things about using a mobile device is that it's really hard to get those special characters to come up. I know every time I try and log into Twitter on my phone, when it forgets, I've restarted it, and I've got to log in and I've got to use the special characters and codes, and it's a pain in the arse. And I don't want my application to be a pain in the arse for the users to use. And also, I want to be able to manage multiple of these multiple devices for a given username at each time. One of the rules for our solution was that it shouldn't be a pain in the arse to use. And if I've got a tablet and I've got a work phone as well, I want to be able to manage each of those separately, and if I've got to remember a different username and password for each one of those, well, that's just not going to work. So we went out and looked at what is there available, every day that we're using. The best solutions are probably solutions which are already being used and tested rather than trying to come up with something new. And so I looked at websites and browsers. So this is something which we use for securing authentication every day. And I trust that I connect to my banking website. It is the banking website that I'm connecting to. How does that work? Well, it works because the website has a certificate in it which is signed by a trusted provider. And I trust who that person is. It uses this whole idea of public-private keys to pass the information so that the website, certificate from the website is signed by that trusted partner. I trust who that partner is. Hey, I'm happy with the communications. I believe who the website is. Now, there's a small problem here is that we're inversing the relationship. In fact, that I want to trust my device. So my website, as it were, wants to trust my device. So I could actually put a certificate on each device and say, okay, well then, and I could even get around the whole fact that the trusted providers charge an absolute bucket load for each certificate, something which is just so absolutely simple. They charge through the nose, abuse their monopoly position for that. But I could even get around that by generating my own certificates, which I could put on the devices. But I still come back to this problem: is how the hell do I actually get the certificates? In the end, this is no more secure for me than actually using a username password, because I'm using HTTPS anyway, which is leveraging all of this security in the first place, what I need to do is somehow figure out how to get the damn thing onto my device. Now, one of the other things that I need to consider as well, which is quite important, is the security. How do I ensure that my device gets lost, or for example, that I can firewall it off so that it can't talk to the cloud anymore? So I want to be able to manage each device separately. Well, actually, I don't. What I want to do, and this is, I think, a common problem. It certainly was in years gone by. I think people are waking up to that this whole idea of device management is dead. I mean, it's complete overkill. I don't want to manage my device. What I want to manage is the application on my device. I know of friends who have had a tablet which they decided that they're using at home, and they're just sitting on their couch surfing the internet, thought they'd like to check their work email. So they signed up to their bring your own device from their work, and then suddenly all these policies got rolled out onto their devices, so that rather than just swiping to unlock their device, they now had to enter in an 8-digit passcode in order to be able to unlock it. And suddenly the fun of being able to just do quickly check on your email on the couch is gone. So what I want to actually do is to, instead of doing a device level management, is application level management. I want to say my particular application, and not any other applications which are on the device, but just mine. I want to put the little firewall around that and say, okay, the communications to that device, this device, but this application, I want to be able to stop if I need to. So that's an important consideration. So again, we come back to the problem. So how the hell do we actually send out that means of authenticating the device to the different devices? Now, one way that sending information securely is to not send it in the same way. So if I were to have my communications, my normal band of communications, which is HTTPS between the cloud and the device, what I need to do is have some way of securely passing an ID to that device so that I can use that ID as part of my communications. Now, what we do is we send this information via another band. So if we have our evil listener dude here who is listening into our normal band of communications, what I do is, instead of sending the information through band A, I send the information through band B, which is basically, so I have on my website, I pass a bit of information to my user who can see it, and goes and then enters it into their device. The device then uses that information as part of a communication to band A, which then sends back information, which is the username and password. Now that username and password can then be used for all subsequent communications to the cloud and stored in my local storage. And that hopefully gets around the evil listening dude with the mustache, although mustaches are not inherently evil. It helped with the drawing. Bad drawing. Anyway, here's an example. If I try and draw what I mean. So I have on my web page an add device button. I can see all the devices that I've actually currently paired to the cloud. So I press the add device button. That then creates my device in the cloud using an AJAX post, which returns a new line into my table which says, hello, this is Chris's device number 1, and then importantly puts on there the pairing code which I'm going to use to pair my device with the cloud. So I enter that pairing code into my device, and then hey presto, that's the out-of-band communication which I've done, which I can then securely get my username and password, which I can then use for all the subsequent calls to that device. Now the nice thing about this is that also for my user I can see the device management. So here's the lock and the delete. So if they want to be able to lock this device, say they've just misplaced it but they're not sure that they've actually lost it, they can just press the lock button, and then that will stop any communications between the device and the cloud. It'll basically de-authenticate the device, but it's not going to permanently do it. They can unlock it later if they need be, or if they know that they've really lost it, they can press the delete button. And of course, if they have more devices, it's a simple matter of them to press the add device button to add as many as they like. Now, so my wish list, what would I like? Well, that pairing code, I would love it to be a little bit more complex, because the more information that I can put into that pairing code, then the more secure it is, because it will stop other people from guessing what the hell the pairing code was. I mean, if it's only 4 or 5 digits long, then it's relatively easy for someone else to guess what it could be. I mean, they just run through all the combinations. Whereas if I use a QR code, I could send a 20 character GUID, and people would have an absolute nightmare trying to guess what it was. So that would be nice. I could just display the QR code on the screen. You could use your device to scan it, bloop, and then it pairs as part of that process. The other thing is, when they're actually pairing, and I've got my table on the screen, and you enter in your pair code, I would love to be able to see when you've paired your device, that it just goes bang and automatically updates the table and says, this device has been paired. Of course, communications, normal HTTP communications between the browser and the website don't allow for that kind of automatic updating of information. So how can you do that? Well, you can use this thing called WebSockets. So WebSockets allows for the two-way communication, and it would just automatically update, and that would be brilliant. And I know that some people have done some WebSockets stuff with NetWeaver Cloud, but I just haven't yet had the time to try it. So anyway, that was my attempt at trying to explain what we did to enable a secure communication, and a simple one as well. The idea of this is that this is a really simple way of securely authenticating a device, an application, doing some very simple application management, which can be done by a user themselves. There's no reason that it couldn't even be done, and the API that the user is using to secure their device be exposed for an administrator to do the same thing, and hell, you could even expose it up so that it could be managed by a central management solution as well. But this is a really simple thing. And that's what I just wanted to explain to you, and I hope you got some value out of the drawings, as bad as they were. Stay tuned for the next in this series of blogs, and I hope you enjoyed. Cheers.